Have you ever left an event and thought, wow, this was a great event? I bet a lot of work went into it. Maybe you even had a brief moment where you thought, you know what? I could host a great event too. Well, it turns out you can. And I'm going to give you my best tips for making that happen today. All right. Good morning. Welcome to another morning episode of the Liberty Dad podcast, a discussion on politics and culture, and sometimes just other things as well. We're trying to make sure that you, the audience, are as well informed on as wide of array of topics as I possibly can cover. So that is my goal. And hopefully, I am achieving that and you are getting something out of it. If you're tuning in live, then I especially want to thank you for giving me your time so early. Now, when I was thinking, you know what, let me back up here a little bit. I need to apologize. I missed yesterday morning and I do apologize. That was unintentional. It just simply had, I had a lot going on. We had our event with I want to say six with five libertarian presidential candidates. They came out here to Jacksonville for our affiliate Saturday night. And I took literally all of my equipment and I used it for that event. And then I got back and a friend of mine had a need. He was like, "Hey man, I've got this water issue going on in my house. Can you come over and help me take a look and see if I need to hire somebody or if this is something I can do or maybe you can help me with?" So I went over there and I helped him with that. And then before I knew it, I ran out of time. There was just no more time to prepare for the show Sunday night. So I said, "Okay, well, I'll do it. I'll just skip this one and I'll do the Monday morning show." So I was going to be good there. And then it turned out that I was not able to do that one either because my son kept stirring in the middle of the night, kind of like that half sleep, half cry. And I'm a light sleeper now that I'm a dad. Before I was a dad, I was like a heavy sleeper. You could have like a tornado go by, and I would not even stir at all. And now, like my son blinks, and I'm all like, "What was that noise?" Like. So I ended up not getting any sleep virtually. It felt like Sunday night, and so I slept in, which really wasn't sleeping in on Monday morning and I got up at like 8 and it felt like I'd only had like, I don't know, 2 hours of sleep. So, I'm back now, back and all fresh, ready to go. So we're going to discuss some things. And initially the topic that I wanted to talk about was what I wanted to do Monday morning was give my review of the candidates in general. But as you just heard, I simply ran out of time. And there's just one thing led to another, and I was not able to pull it off. So that's delayed for another day or two until I can get caught back up. But the show must go on. And so I was like, well, what am I going to talk about? Because I this whole weekend was basically preparing and managing this event. So I didn't really have time to look online and see what was going on. So then I was like, well, maybe I should talk about the event itself and what it takes to put on an event. Because you may not know this, but I've actually managed quite a few events in different spaces. Apologies for that. Goodness, to get that under control. So, one of my first big events that I got to host, or not want to say host, but I got to manage when I was working for a company. It was a fastener distribution company. This was many years ago, and we had we had a bunch of they're not events. I'm trying to think. They're projects. I guess in the business world they call them projects. I was basically the project manager for one. So what happened is I went to my not my boss, but my boss's boss at the time. And my team, we managed basically our role was to manage anything from uh, so we were distribution for fasteners like nuts, bolts, screws, stuff like that. And so our role was if the part, from the moment the parts hit our dock to the moment they go on the customer's production line, the team that I was on, we had some role in between there, any all kind of stuff, and we were like process management. So our goal was to make sure that the parts moved from one spot to the next spot in the way they're supposed to, with the least amount of effort and all the things that were needed. So that was my role, and we were getting ready to do this new move where we had we'd gotten a new customer and we went out and the project for that customer was a nightmare. Um, and then later on, after that kind of got worked out and we were in and we had the new customer and we were delivering parts. Well, one of the things that we had acquired was a branch, and the branch was in an old building, and we had to finish out the lease. So the lease came up, and our company was like, "All right, well, we're going to move everything from one building to the next building, and we're going to do it while everybody's working because the customer's production line doesn't stop because we need to make a move." And so I went to my boss's boss and I said something like, "Are we going to have a proper project manager? Because in the last project, I felt like there were too many of them and I wasn't sure who to answer to. And all I wanted was just like, who's going to be the point person for this project, you know?" And he said, Dan, because DL stands for Daniel. He said, and they didn't call me DL back then. He said, Dan, are you asking to be the project manager? And I was like, and I mean, that wasn't what I was doing, but I was like, sure. Now, I had no idea what I was doing. Okay. Like I just was like, sure, I can do this. And I did. And it was actually successful. And we'll talk about some things here in a minute that happened. But it was my first big event. Like I actually oversaw like 17 people. And there were some ups and there were some serious downs. Oh my gosh, there were some serious downs. And it was quite the learning experience for me. Beyond that, I've helped when I was the secretary here at a local real estate organization. And this organization, the way that it worked is if you wanted to get into real estate, like you were an investor, you were a real estate agent, maybe you're a contractor, just anything that's involved in the real estate sphere, then you might join this organization and then they would have monthly meetings where they would bring out speakers and you could network with other people. So maybe I was somebody that wanted to, maybe I've got one house that I'm flipping. Maybe I needed a contractor. So I might be part of this organization and then I connect with other people and then I find me a good contractor to do a certain thing that I need. Right, so that was the organization. They had a membership of like several hundred, like 300 people or so. And so I ended at one point I became the secretary and I said, "Hey, look, I think our monthly meetings are good, but we can really improve upon them." So I literally drew out like our space in SketchUp. And I was like, "All right, we're going to bring people in here. We're going to do this. We're going to," because what we were trying to do is just organize it so that the flow of things went better. And so that was a lot of fun. So I did that. And then now I'm the chair of the Libertarian Party here in Duval County, so an affiliate chair. and we've hosted a number of events, and some of them are small and some of them are fairly large for an affiliate, including this last Saturday. And so I was thinking about it and I was like, "Oh, like all these things that I've done are different, but there are some elements that are true. So what I want to do is give some motivation and give some of my best tips on how whoever, in whatever space you're operating, and we'll talk about leadership, we'll talk about volunteers, but how you can be part of a successful event as well. Because what I don't really want, I don't want to, I'm not interested in doing things and then not helping other people find that same success. I want whatever the things that I do, I hope people come behind me and do just as well and hopefully even better. Right? Whoever comes behind me as the chair, hopefully I've set things up and made some things happen so that they can do things just as well and even better. Right? And then when I'm talking on this podcast, I don't want to just talk and hear myself. Like I do that. My wife would tell you I do that all the time. So I clearly don't need a podcast for that. But it would be great that if I could communicate to you all these things that I feel have led to some of the successes that our affiliate has seen, that I've been a part of. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. And we're going to start with leadership. So I think, I think that'll be good. And really quickly, let me just throw this out there. Missed you too, Keith. Thank you. Thank you for being on. Thank you, everybody, for being on. I appreciate everybody that gets up so early. Um, I was always hesitant about like 7 a.m. a good idea, but it seems to be working. So we're going to continue it. But anyway, um, so leadership. My first tip for any leader: be humble. I have a good friend. Yeah, his name is Keith. He doesn't even live in Florida. I met him when I was in North Carolina, and he's a really smart guy. And the one advice he helped mentor me as a developer, writing code and whatnot, and that's what I do for a living now. And his when I first was learning, he like one of the lessons that he just repeated all the time. He was like, "Stay humble, be humble," and that wasn't even in leadership. That was just me trying to get get work, like change careers. Like there was no leadership involved there. But I have found that in leadership, be humble is probably the best advice that you can have, especially if you're operating in an organization that is all volunteer because nobody got time for that. And they are volunteers. That means they don't have to do anything. It's not like when I worked at the fastener company and, my one of my superiors said, "All right, you're in charge of this project," and then told everybody, "You report to this guy." Like that was their job. Like they were required to do that. Right. And so, and don't get me wrong. I'm not saying you can like not be humble in that situation. You should be humble there too. But what I'm saying, it's especially critical if you're working in an organization where people they can just be like, you know what? See ya. You can be a jerk, do it yourself. And I've seen it happen. And so you are, as a leader, you are moving pieces. So there's a certain level of importance there. I mean, we're not going to try to downplay it, but you are still working with people. So you have to take that into consideration. And people have emotions. I know it's crazy, but they do. And you have emotions, they have emotions. We're not going to get all weepy eyed here, but we do have to recognize reality. You are working with people. They will get upset. They will respond. People respond to incentives. So if you're one of those libertarians, it's like, I don't really work well with people. Here, fine. Think about it from economics perspective, right? People respond to incentives. What incentive are you giving people to do the things that you want them to do? And if you're not being humble, that is an incentive. If you are humble, that is also an incentive because people like working with other people that are enjoyable to work with, right? Um, part of being humble also means taking responsibility for failures. Goodness. So, one of the things that I start off with is anything that goes wrong is my fault. When I like it makes me in a certain respect, it may be somebody else's fault. Like somebody may have done something wrong, and so I'm not saying like like nothing is anybody else's fault, but I'm saying I take responsibility for failure. So let me give you a quick story. Remember the fastener move, right? Where we're moving from one facility to the next. So here's what happened. Um, we were moving everything, all of our equipment, all of our fasteners, everything. And so we were putting them in a big box truck and we were taking it over and then dropping it off. So I'm going back and forth between the two facilities. And as I'm pulling away, I think I was leaving the new facility, I happened to see something weird on the back of a truck that was parked, one of our big box trucks. And I was like, and so I backed up and I was like, and then I look and I saw that the door, the sliding door that comes down, was caved out. And I was like, that's weird. Like, this is a brand new truck. Why is the door literally caved out? If you, like, instead of being flat like this, it was literally caved out. So I get out of my car and I walk up and I look inside of the hole, right? Like this little gaping hole. And I saw a forklift at the front of the truck. And then it all clicked in. I was like, oh my God. They drove, whoever was driving, drove in that truck, and the forklift somehow came out and almost fell out because the door was caved out. And I was like, holy wow. Now, I did give the guys a hard time over it. I was like, hey, this happened. Um, and from now on, they got mad at me. I said, from now on, what you're going to do is anytime you move any big piece of equipment, you need to call me before it leaves so I can double check. And I was mad at them, right? But I wasn't like wasn't going to town. I wasn't like yelling and berating them and all that. I just said, look, this is what happened. You guys made a mistake. And so now you have to call me anytime. And they got mad. They're like, we know how to. I'm like, apparently not. Okay, they did. They were like, we know how to move stuff. And I was like, well, apparently not, because it almost fell out the truck. And this is a big deal because a forklift is like 2, 3, 4,000 pounds. So imagine if that had fell out and hit a car behind him. That would have been a disaster. So this is a huge deal, right? And this is my first project. This is one of the things that I got to deal with on my first project, like first major project. And but then I had to call my boss, the guy that was like, "Hey Dan, are you saying you want to be the project?" So now I had to call him and let him know because the truck is damaged. We got to get it repaired. And I need to let him know, what happened. So, because here's the thing, when you're communicating to your superiors, whoever they may be, you never, ever let them find out from someone else if you can absolutely help it. You be the one to deliver bad news. You take, especially if you're in charge, right? You be the one, because I was in charge. Responsibility was partly was it was in some sense my failure to make sure that these men knew exactly what was expected of them. So I called him up and I said, "Hey, we have a problem. This is what happened." And then I told him, I said, "Here's what I've done about it." So I took full responsibility for it. And I was hesitant. I remember feeling so nervous to call him because I was like, "Oh my God, first big project, and I got to tell him that a forklift almost fell out of the back of a truck." So it was intense. It was an intense feeling. Um, but I had to take responsibility for it because at the end of the day, I was the project manager. And some responsibility does fall down. Like, hey guys, you made a mistake, but I can't just be like, hey, you guys made a mistake. You figure it out next time. No, I had to have a plan in place because I had to communicate that to the people that I was reporting to, right? And you are always reporting to somebody. Doesn't matter if you're the top guy, you're reporting to somebody. If you're the top guy, then you're reporting to the market. But you are reporting to somebody and you have to take responsibility because whoever you report to, that's who they're going to look at. The way it goes. Um, Part of being humble also means giving credit to volunteers. I see this all the time. People are like, I did this. And I don't mean like when they're talking about an event and what happened. Like, I'm talking about this particular thing that I did and some of the roles that I played. And that's fine. But when you're boasting about an event, when you're talking about an event and how great it went, um, do this. boast in private, praise in public. Okay. You talk to your friends, your family, your wife, your spouse, tell them, how good you feel about what you accomplished. Right. When you're in public, you praise the people that are working with you and for you. Okay. They get the praise. And here's why. Because when you're in public, people are automatically going to give you praise if you are the leader. If you're the one responsible for making an event happen, you will get credit for it. You don't need to go out and find it. You don't need to seek it. It will come to you. And then when it does, because this has happened, I'll get up and you'll hear this. If listen to anybody that's talking about an event, they will always say, I couldn't have done it without my team. I couldn't have done it without this great set of volunteers. The reason they say that because it's true. You cannot do everything unless it's a tiny little event. You need the people that are working for you, and they need to hear that you're appreciative of them. And it's better off, in my opinion, if you just in your mind know that you did well rather than even boast. Like I don't generally come home and talk about what a great job that I did on an event that had other people involved to my wife. I usually say, "Man, that event went great. I was so excited. This went well and that went." So I'm really talking about the event, okay? But I'm not necessarily coming home and boasting. But if you have to, boast in private. But I would say that you're better off just to know that you did well. If you did, I mean, if you didn't do well, then you have to own that as well. Uh, and even better, just enjoy in your mind knowing that you did well while thinking, how can I do better next time? Right? This is part of being humble is knowing to um, when to take enjoyment and how to take enjoyment because it's not a bad thing. Mm, sorry about that, folks. Um, I'm not sure what's going on with my throat here lately. But it's good to know that you've done well and but never lose sight that you can always do better. There's always something that you could have done and I've never had an event ever that went so well that I was like, man, I don't think that event could have went any better. And sometimes better doesn't necessarily mean like what other people would have recognized. Sometimes the better is this could have been more smooth. So maybe the event itself played out just fine and everybody that went and everybody that attended thought it was a great event and they couldn't think of any way that it could be better. But for you, the organizer, it could be better in the sense that, hey, you know what? Maybe this could have been a little smoother. Maybe this could have been planned out a little bit better. Maybe we were too frustrated at this one point, right? There's always something to to be better. So when you're being humble, you remember that and you remember that there is somewhere I could have improved. And so if after the fact you are you are looking at it and saying, "Man, I'm really glad it turned out this way, and I'm excited and I'm happy." Because I was when I came back from our event this last Saturday, I was really happy with how things played out. And there were a lot of things, there were a lot of small things that could have been better. That's not to say that anybody dropped the ball or that they did wrong. Just there were opportunities for improvement, and those are in the back of my mind as somebody who's in leadership who will be taking part of organizing the next event because what I want is I want things to get better and better and better as we go along because the people that volunteer who are part of it and make it better, they feel better and better and better. Once upon a time, we were doing park cleanups. Super simple. Anybody could if you've never led a project, you could lead a park cleanup. That is a great start. And people were excited about that. Hey, look, we feel good about how clean this park looks compared to when we got here. We feel good about these 6 bags of trash because we know that how much trash that we have picked up. And they feel good about it and they should feel good about it, right? And then when we move on to the next event and we do something that's a little bit bigger and has more moving pieces and requires more planning, the people that are involved, they want to feel good about doing that as well. People want to feel good about the work that they do. So therefore, constantly think about how could how could we do better? Because it's not the volunteer's job to think about all the planning. That's not their role. Their job is to do. Now, there might be some planning on their part, depending on the size and the scope of the event and the things that you're doing. But for the most part, that's the lead project person's role. Their job is to do, effectively take responsibility for the planning. That doesn't necessarily mean all of the planning. We'll get to that in a minute, but they take responsibility for it. And so you should always be thinking about how could we do better? How could this be less painful for the people that we're helping? There have been times, there have been projects that I've been on where it has been painful and we enjoyed it when we were done. But it would be nice if the next time we didn't have to suffer that kind of pain to accomplish the same thing or even more. Okay. All right. So let's move on. What else? As like I said, as a leader, you are going to get compliments. People will bring you up. You'll be at an event and they'll say, and it's happened to me. They'll say, "Oh, this great job that DL is doing down there. Let's bring him up and he'll give you a couple of words, about this thing or about what he does or whatever." And then that's the time as a leader for you to get up there and be like, "Thank you very much. I couldn't have done it without the volunteers." Right? Never, ever, ever lose sight that your volunteers help you, because if you don't give them credit, they don't have to show up the next time. And the fact of the matter is, they probably did a lot of the work. So therefore, they should get the credit publicly. There's a time and a place for accepting compliments, and there is a way to do it. Humble. So stay humble. All right. What's the next thing? Communicate. People cannot deliver what you want if you don't communicate well. That means you have to, and it varies based on the project, right? There are projects where maybe the communication is, "Hey, Fred, where are you? How are you doing?" So you're not really asking him like if he's delivered his portion of the project. You're just asking like, "Hey, let's do a check in really quickly. Let's see how you're feeling," because Fred might be on target with his task, but he might be frustrated about something else. And one of my views of leadership is that it is to remove obstacles from the people that are helping you, the volunteers, the workers. Your job is to remove obstacles in any way that you can, right? Because like, why would you not? If you have the authority, right, which tends to be the case with project managers, you have the authority. That means you have the authority to remove some of these obstacles, right? They don't always have the ability to do that because they don't have the charge, they don't have the responsibility, whatever the case may be. They just may not be in a position to remove those obstacles. So communication is not just, "Hey, did you deliver what I wanted you to deliver at the time that I wanted you to deliver it?" It is also things like, "Hey, where are you? How are things going? Oh, your frustration?" Because guess what? Their frustration will become your frustration. I mean, I've seen it. I've watched it happen in the Libertarian Party, and I've watched people publicly take their frustration, who was somebody else's frustration, and then they go and put people on blast. And you know what? That's wrong. So if you're a leader and you're being humble and you're communicating, you won't do those kind of things. You'll recognize that you can accomplish a whole lot kind of in private, behind the scenes. But definitely communicate. Here's another part of communication: listen to your people. I do not profess to know how to do everything. And there are some things where, like, yeah, maybe you can do everything. Like if it's a park cleanup and you're organizing it, then probably you can make all the decisions and you don't need any input, right? I mean, I still wouldn't do it, you know, have people say, "Hey, this park is better." And in fact, I guess that kind of makes the point, right? Like you can't know everything. Even in the park cleanups, I didn't always know which park was a better park because I haven't been to them all. But some of the other people that have been volunteering, they do know the parks. They know them better than me. So there's always something you don't know, right? Who is it that said? I think it's Thomas Sowell. He said, "Everyone is ignorant about something." Kind of goes back to humility, being humble. But listen to your people. They have ideas. That doesn't mean that you take every idea, right? But if you don't take any ideas, oh, they'll catch on. People are like, "Oh, he never takes any of our ideas." And then guess what? When you the day you need ideas, they may be a little reluctant to give it to you. So communicate, and part of that means listening, listening to what the people are saying. Um, and then you have to make a decision. So sometimes that decision will be, you know what, Fred, you're right. We should absolutely go to this park instead. That is and inquire, dig in further about that. Like that is your role to communicate. You can't rely on the, you can't say, hey, Fred, what do you think? And then expect that he's just going to unload this great, huge argument. You might have to ask questions, right? You might have to say, like, okay, what do you mean? Well, why would you do that? I had in the company that I work for now, I have a manager and he is very good at asking questions. Sometimes sometimes it gets on my nerves a little bit. And the reason isn't because of him, because he'll ask so many questions that sometimes I don't have answers to him and then I feel kind of inadequate. But he's doing his job. He is asking questions so that he fully understands what he needs to know in order to make the best decision. And that comes by communicating, telling people, listening to people. Um, let's see, what's that? What else we got? Oh, this is a good one. We talked about it a moment ago. Hold people responsible, but do it wisely. Do you know how many times I've seen people like put somebody on blast publicly and, like they didn't need to. They just berated him and went crazy, and then the person feels embarrassed. Well, okay, let's think of it this way. Maybe this person, maybe you're in a work environment, right? And in the work environment, they can't go anywhere, right? Like in a volunteer organization, somebody can just leave. Okay. A person can just say, you know what, I'm out of here. I'm done. I don't have to take this. And in a work environment, it's a little bit, a little bit less so. I mean, they can still do it technically. Somebody could just be like, you know what, I don't need this job. I'll find another one. And then they just take off and leave. That can happen. But let's just say that they don't. They don't have to work as hard the next time. They can only deliver the bare minimum. Right? So you want to be wise when you're holding people responsible. You don't want to be such a jerk that that it causes them to hide things from you later for fear or to not give you their best. Because your job as a leader is to get the best out of people and to make sure that when it's all said and done, they they had some level of enjoyment out of whatever it is that whatever project that you did. If let's do this. Let's say that Saturday night we hosted this event and the event went awesome. It was a great event, but I was a jerk to people on the way. Okay. If that had happened, I might actually have trouble the next time getting people to help, or I may not get them to work as hard as they did the prior time. So the next event may not go as well. It may be mediocre or I may suffer more problems. This is why when you hold people responsible, you want to do it wisely, right? I didn't make a big scene about the forklift. I didn't yell and scream. I think I did get a little angry with them. I didn't go and put them on blast to other people. I didn't go talk about it and say, man, I can't believe these bozos, they can't even load a forklift and hammer and hammer a chalk block in front of the wheel so it doesn't roll around. Like, what a bunch of nincompoops. I didn't do all that, but I have seen that happen. Okay. There's no need to berate people or put them down. You hold them responsible for the thing that they were supposed to do. And you have to constantly make wise decisions. And it even includes when you're holding somebody responsible for something. If somebody doesn't deliver, and they're supposed to deliver. Like if I need something to be done and I need somebody to deliver on Monday, and on Monday they don't deliver, and I still need them to deliver, if I'm a jerk, yeah, it might put a fire under them and they may get it delivered quickly, or it may get them to drag, and then I don't get it delivered even yet on Tuesday. Okay. Now there is a time and place to put a fire under somebody. Don't get me wrong. I'm not suggesting that we never hold somebody responsible and you, you might have to get an ass chewing. Let's put it that way, folks. I've had one and like anybody that's done anything, has had their ass chewed. Okay. So sometimes it does happen, but that shouldn't be the first go to. And if you can avoid it and still get the results that you want and communicate your dissatisfaction with not getting the results or not having something delivered when it was supposed to be, then you're better off. You are better off if you don't have to get to that fire position but still get the results and communicate the situation, right? But sometimes it does happen. Sometimes people do get yelled at, and if you're a volunteer or you're a worker, you know it's the way that's the way way it goes. um as much as I would like to say that it should never happen, that would be unrealistic. um, Here is a good one. Have an ear to bend privately. Most of y'all don't even know this, but I rant and rave like crazy about things because I like things to go perfect. And if they're not perfect, I get very upset. And so behind the scenes, I have trusted people that I reach out to, um, and they're not always in the same space. And I know that these people are not going to go run their mouth. Now, that's not where I go and I say, "Man, I can't believe that Fred. What a moron! He's an idiot." That's not what I mean for a trusted person. Trusted person where you can go and you can rant about something that's a legitimate rant that you may be overindulging in how angry you are, right? Like this is the so if Fred doesn't deliver and you took a chance on Fred and you were hesitant about it, then that trusted person might be the person you go and say, "Man, I can't believe Fred didn't deliver. And you know what? Here I put a lot of faith in him and he didn't deliver. And I'm so angry at him." Of course, you may be saying it with, you know, more choice words, if you will. But this is where you have an opportunity to rant, and your trusted person is going to see through the fluff and get to the real point and help get you straightened out, right? Sometimes it's my wife. I've got people in the Libertarian Party that I reach out to all the time. I talk to them about things. And sometimes and this trusted person, they have to be somebody that you're going to listen to. It's not a trusted person if you rant at them and then just use them to offload your anger. That's not, and sometimes it doesn't even have to be a rant. Sometimes you could just, talk to them and be like, "Hey, what do you think about this idea? Blah, blah, blah. I think about doing this, yada, yada, yada." So I'll do that sometimes. But it's a person that when they speak, I listen, right? Like no matter what position I'm in, like, or what place I'm in, where I might be just sure that this is the right idea. If they say, "Nah, DL, you need to really rethink that," I listen and I say, "Why?" Right? Because that's what having a trusted person is. And I don't like using profanity on the show, but we'll do it this. I know I used a minor profane word a moment ago, but let me explain something to you. There was a movie called Saving Private Ryan. Yeah, that's the name of it. So Saving Private Ryan was had Tom Hanks in it, and there was a particular scene where the guys were asking like, how come he never seemed to complain or something like that, and one of the guys says, "Bitch up, not down." Right? And so I've always remembered that, and that's a common phrase. Your complaints go up or lateral if you want, right? But you never complain down unless you're the only complaint is, "Fred, you didn't do this. I need you to do this. What's it going to take?" Right? Like that's the extent of your complaining down. But you don't, like, if Fred didn't do something right and he's on my team, and then I've got Mary on my team. I don't, and she's equal to Fred. You do not go and complain about Fred to Mary. And you don't go and complain about Fred publicly, because it's the same thing as complaining to his peer, right? That is for your trusted ear. That is, if you have a frustration, which you do, you will have them. You will get frustrated with somebody. I mean, you will get frustrated with anybody I get frustrated with my wife sometimes, and I have people that I can go to and complain a little bit about, right? Now, this is not your chance to go and just say all the mean things that you don't have the nerve to say to their face. This is a person that is there to hear you out, wade through the nonsense, and get you where you need to be. And sometimes it's a rant, and sometimes you're just talking. But whatever it is, it's a trusted person that you're willing to listen to. And when they say you're wrong, then you listen. You've got to have one of those. So, because otherwise you will end up complaining to your people, and then you're back to, you're back to losing your humility and some of these other things. So you know, get somebody if you don't have somebody. And I would actually recommend getting multiple somebodies. I'll be honest with you, and I don't think he's going to have any issues with me saying this. I'm the chair of the party, and our vice chair is currently Tub. And there was a time that I was frustrated with him about something. We're not going to talk about it, but I was frustrated with him. And sometimes I go to him, right? When I'm having frustration with other things, I'll go to because he's the vice chair. Like I should be able to go to him. And but this in this particular case, I was frustrated with him. So I had to go with somebody else, right? And so you got to have people. And sometimes it's good to have people that are not in that space. My buddy Steve, that I talk about all the time, he's not even a libertarian. He's more of a progressive kind of guy, but he's in management. And so he understands, leadership roles. And sometimes I will go to him to get his feedback and I'll say, what do you think? And there was a time a long time ago, there was something going on and it was getting pretty rough. Let's put it this way. There was a point where lawyers got involved. Okay. There was this thing. We're not going to go into all the details. And yeah, I was keeping him up with something with what was happening. And at one point I was going off about something and he said, DL, you've kept me aware of what's happening in this situation. And for a long time, it did come across as very noble. But tonight, it's not coming across noble, man. I think you need to check yourself. I think you need to reevaluate where you are because you're no longer sounding noble in this thing that you're trying to make happen. And at first I was like, dude, no, no, I'm totally noble. That's like the first sign that you're not when you're arguing with them. So, but and while I didn't listen initially, uh I did think about those words and then I had to reflect and I was like, he's right. I totally have stepped out of where I want to be with this. And he was again in that particular situation, he was also not in that space, right? So you need to have people, you need to have multiple people because sometimes the person in the space is the frustration. So you need somebody else in a different space. And it always needs to be up or lateral, never ever down. And for the love of God, I'm speaking to you libertarians because I see this a lot. Stop taking everything publicly. Like, I get it, transparency, all that, but if you're in leadership, that isn't that isn't a matter of transparency, that's just you being a jerk. It's gonna that like, there's no other way to put it. You're just being a jerk. Not everything has to be so there are plenty of things that have happened in the Libertarian Party that were a organization, matter of organization, and, you'll never know about them. Big things. And there's been times where I think it was I went to my wife and I was like, I'm gonna quit. I don't need this. They can all go to heck. Right. Like there's been a few times where I've been, ready just to walk out the door. And I was ranting and raving and I needed that person to say, all right, have you thought about this? Which is not something you want to hear necessarily, but you need to hear it. Let's continue on. All right. So start small. One of the things that a lot of people like to do is they like to jump in and they just like to take the biggest. And I get it. I get it. It's fun. The bigger events are fun. And the excitement, the joy that you get from accomplishing a big event, I get it. However, you get all the frustrations that come along with it. And just like if you go to the gym, now I'm a small guy, so I don't know, maybe I shouldn't be doing this. So maybe I shouldn't be using this analogy. But if I were to go to the gym and I were to say, I'm going to bench press 200 pounds, if I can get it off the bar, which I probably could, if I can get it off, I might drop it on my chest on the way down. Okay. Because I haven't built up the muscle for that. So I might have to start at, I can do better than just the bar, but let's just say maybe I do have to start at the bar. And yeah, you know, you're seeing other people and they've got like 2 and 3 and 4 45-pound weights on both sides, right? Like you see other guys, they built up to it. They once upon a time had to do just the bar or maybe just a couple small weights, right? And the same thing goes with events and projects. You've got to start small. Sometimes you start off and the only thing that you're doing is a park cleanup. That's the way it goes. Now, I got lucky on one of my first ones that I was able to oversee like 17 people and manage an entire move. That was like my first big, and I didn't really have a lot of, I did have some. I mean, I don't want to say that I had no experience whatsoever, but I did take a bit of a leap from the experience that I had to that particular project. And let me tell you, it was stressful. It was extremely stressful. And part of that stress, because I didn't know what to expect. I had no idea. So there were many things that maybe I could have foreseen that might have went wrong or been a challenge that I could have dealt with up front, and then I wouldn't have had to deal with them on the spot while I'm dealing with other things. Because that's the catch. Any one stress when you're doing a project is in itself, by itself, probably not that big of a deal. They become a big deal because you have a number of things that you're trying to juggle and accomplish. So if you haven't had to deal with that, then start small. Promise you, you will you could burn yourself out very quickly on your first one or two projects if you fail to start small. Because I did the park cleanups and I started out with those, um, then it made it easier to do the next one. And you start and the things that you can do better, right? Right. Do better on. I mean, it's hard to imagine how you could make a park cleanup any better, but anything can be done better, right? But the lessons that you learn from that go toward the next event, the next event, the next event, and so on and so forth, right? And they build up. And that is the same concept as going to the gym and saying, all right, I'm gonna start with the bar and 25-pound weight on either side. So I got 50 pounds plus the bar. So is the bar 45? So now I'm at 95 pounds, right? So I'm at 95 pounds. You don't look impressive. All the big lunks that are there, they're lifting more weight. But if they're humble, and they should be, they'll know once upon a time they were where you were, right? And it's true what they say. You will never be criticized by somebody I think it's how to say. You'll never be criticized by somebody doing better than you, right? Because they recognize where you are. They recognize that once upon a time they were there. That nobody starts out. You know, I didn't start out getting 6 candidates to come to an affiliate event, right? Like I started out with park cleanups. I started out with even smaller. I started out with like, hey, let's get an affiliate going. We have no affiliate. There's three of us. Hooray, we have an affiliate now. We weren't even doing anything. We like not a single event. The only, I mean, if you want to call them events, the only events that we had were literally having meetings where the officers showed up. So that's where we started, right? That's where I got my start in the Libertarian Party. And then now we're doing bigger and better things. And every success that I've had, no matter how small it was, led to getting a better, a bigger success. Um, we started out again, like I said, we started out with three people coming to our meetings, literally just the officers, the mandatory people, the required people. And then now we're at a point where we're looking at 30, 40, 50 people coming to an event, right? That we put on. And we're in, believe it or not, we're actually already working on our next event. And we've been working on that. I started that about a week ago, about a week, maybe a week and a half ago. I started that about a week and a half before this one had even finished. And the only reason for that is not because is because there was a time frame on getting the ball moving. Otherwise, I would have actually waited until we had this one done. But because there was a time frame that I needed to get that initiated, I started it. But not a lot of things have happened with that. Just kind of like getting that ball rolling. That's it. The other thing that happens, changes happen. Man, if you attended our event this Saturday, and you've not managed any kind of events, you probably thought, man, this worked out exactly as they planned. And that would be wrong. A lot of things changed. I'll tell you some of the things that have changed. Um, We initially wanted to start the event at 7. No, for before that, we were gonna have a speaker at 6:30, a pre-event speaker. He was gonna give a presentation about something, and that ended up changing, okay? And so then we were like, "All right, well, now we're just gonna have the candidates come at 7 o'clock." All right, cool. And we're gonna have the pre-event speaker, and then we're gonna have a slight, like, 10 to 15-minute comedy bit before the speakers got up, just to kind of warm up the crowd a little bit, right? So we have, like, this pre-event, and then the event starts, and you have, like, the MC who is headlining basically our candidates, with the comedy bit. Well, that was supposed to start at 6:30, then at 7, we have the comedy, then about 7:15, we have the candidates come in. We have 6 candidates. That was initially how it planned out. What we ended up with was, we no longer had the 6:30, and then we moved our comedy bit to 6:45, and then instead of 6 candidates, we ended up having 5 candidates, but we almost had 7 candidates because we had 1 candidate about a week and a half prior reach out and say, "Hey, I was thinking I might like to attend." And so we were trying to figure out like, "Okay, can we make this happen?" Because our schedule's already pretty tight. And so we started shuffling things around. Then it was determined, by the candidate, not us, that it was that he wanted to, maybe not try to make this particular event because it's kind of short notice for him as well. And so he ended up deciding not to attend. And then we had one of the 6 candidates, original candidates, about a week prior say, "Hey, something's come up. I'm not able to make it. I'm really sorry." So, okay, cool. So that changed. So we went from 6 candidates to almost 7 down to 5. And then our time changed on us. Then the order of events, the way things happened, because we initially had planned it where each candidate would get up and speak, and then after they spoke, they would be given 2 video clips from a Republican or Democratic candidate that they would be randomly chosen, and then they would get a chance to respond to them. And then we would move to the next candidate, and then the next candidate, and then we would be done. Well, what ended up happening was we had each candidate come up and give their speech. Then after the speeches, then we went to intermission. And then when we came back from intermission, we gave a special announcement. And then after the special announcement, then we went into the video responses. So the entire format changed. And you want to know when that changed? On the ground, the day of, while we were there, changes were still happening. And this is the reason why it's good to do smaller events first, because you're always going to have some sort of change, and you need to be prepared to handle that change. And some of the changes will be no big deal. Some of the changes you're going to have to really put your thinking hat on. You're going to be like, "Oh crap, how are we going to make this happen?" Right? Like when that potential seventh guy reached out, I was like, "Oh man," I was like, because we were basically set, and the only frustration was, how are we going to change the schedule because our schedule is already tight, and we wanted to make sure that we didn't waste anybody's time because these candidates were coming out from all over the US. We had one come out from California, one from Iowa. Several of them were close enough they could drive, but still, they were coming out. They were spending time and money to come out. And we wanted to make sure that we didn't. We didn't say, "Hey, you're going to get 8 minutes to speak," and they say, "Okay, I'm going to buy a plane ticket, come out and spend 8 minutes," and then get on the ground and find out they only have 3 minutes to speak. Like we want to make sure that we are considerate of their time as well. I know they're candidates and their job is to try to gain support, but at the same time, we're running an event. We want to make sure that people want to come back the next time. And so all these kind of things happen. And we had more changes, and there's a whole bunch of other things that happened. Um, and none of them, at the end of the day, none of them were that big of a deal. Right. So you have to be prepared for it. And you get prepared for it by having smaller changes happen in smaller events, because otherwise if somebody had never managed an event and they tried to manage this one, more than likely it would have stressed them the heck out. They would have been like, "Oh my goodness, this was a terrible." But for me, I looked at it, there were some times where it was a little frustrating, not too bad, but no big deal. Like, this is what happens. This is how an event plays out. Like, things change. Here's the last tip for the leaders, and then, man, I'm running up on time. I didn't think it was going to go this long. Last tip: stay excited. This is a huge one. Never let people see you sweat. Right? At least not out in public. Never let your people see you sweat. Never let people that are attendees see you sweat. Why? You are the morale booster, not your volunteers, although it's good if they do that too. And hopefully they do. And they can more easily do it if you are boosting their morale. But you are the morale booster. So you have to stay positive. You got to stay excited because there will be times where everybody's just tired, right? The event hasn't happened yet or it's not over, but they're tired because it's a lot of work. So you got to be that morale booster and keep people excited because the more people are excited, the less challenging and stressful it will feel. All right. So let me move on to the volunteer portion. This is actually pretty quick. Most of it was the leadership, but I've also been a volunteer. Be patient. Look, yeah, if you're a volunteer, which trust me, you are critical, be patient because if you were listening to everything I just said, you probably were like, wow, that's a lot. That's a lot to keep in mind if you're in leadership. It is. So be patient because sometimes we get frustrated too. Now, it's on us as leaders to maintain our bearings, to be the morale booster, to keep people excited, to make the decisions, even the hard decisions. That's on us. We've asked for that. So we need to keep that in mind. But also don't remember, while we are supposed to keep in mind that you are a person, a flesh and blood human being with emotions, so are we. Just try to be patient with us. Deliver what you promise. And I tell you what, when I'm at work in my job, I do whatever I have to do to deliver what I promise, right? And if I cannot, then I come with a proper explanation, not excuses. And part of that explanation is here's how I'm going to get it delivered. Okay. So maybe it's as simple as I can't deliver because somebody didn't deliver to me what I was expecting. But you can't just shove the blame on somebody else. You have to take the responsibility. If you promised to deliver it, you promised to deliver it. And if that included somebody else delivering to you, that's still a promise you made to somebody else. So you need to own that. But it's easier for leadership if you come to the because think of it this way. If I ask Fred, I keep using Fred. I'm glad that we don't have a Fred because he'd feel really, really weird right now. But if I ask Fred, hey, can you deliver this thing to me? And then Fred said, absolutely, I can totally deliver that by Thursday. Now, I don't know what Fred's up to. I don't know all the things that he's doing. I don't know what he challenges he might be facing. Okay. All I know is that I asked Fred to deliver this thing to me, and he said Thursday he could do it. So I'm expecting. So on Thursday, I come around and I say, hey, Fred, where are we with this? Do you have it? Do you have this thing ready? And then he might say, no, I don't. Now, I don't know at this point. I have no knowledge of why he doesn't have this. Okay. All I know is he didn't deliver, and I may have promised something else that requires his delivery. So now the best way it's the same as the leadership. Communicate. So communicate. Okay, well, DL, this is the reason why I don't have this. I ran into a problem. Here's the problem. Here's how I fixed it. Here's my new delivery date. Right? Like have some of this information at the ready so that so if you're afraid, have that information ready so that DL, me, or whomever, they will have confidence that it's going to get delivered and when. And then they can adjust the expectations for whoever they've made promises to. So it's very important that you always deliver what you promise. And sometimes it is crunch time. Sometimes you just got to put in that extra work. I'm 45 and I don't particularly like working overnight, but there have been times where I did not want to miss a deadline and I've had things happen. And I said, all right, grab some coffee. It's going to be a long night. And I have stayed up all night, even in my 40s, to deliver something for work. Did I have to? It's arguable, but I like to deliver what I promise when I promise it. Here's another one when it comes to delivery. Over deliver. Now, people never like hearing this, but I'm going to tell you over deliver, but not too much, just a little bit. Here's why. If you can over deliver, people love that. And when you over deliver, make sure it's something that's meaningful. Don't just come up with something random and be like, all right, I'm going to do this extra thing. Make it meaningful. So when I'm working on projects at work in my job is to build tools that other people use. So I automate things. I write a lot of code and I'll deliver stuff. And so sometimes I'll come to somebody and I'll say, hey, you were talking about, let's make it simple. You were talking about it would be nice if the button was red, but you weren't sure about the color scheme. So here, I made it red for you. It may not have been an actual request, but I was listening to what they had to say, and I was looking for an opportunity to deliver just a little bit more than what was expected. And the reason for that is when it's meaningful, which means you've probably listened to something that they said in passing, then people realize, hey, this person's trying to make this thing awesome for me. And it could be as simple as I made a button red that you didn't specifically ask for, you just said it in passing. Here's the other reason why I say not too much. If you deliver too much and it's not something that like they end up not wanting it, then you're going to feel a little bit bitter about having done it. But if it's just a small thing, then it's no big deal. It was something small. They didn't really need it after all. Or it turns out once they got it, they actually didn't like it as much as they thought they would. Cool, no big deal. But they'll remember that you tried to over deliver, and you'll remember that you didn't put a whole bunch of work into it. So always deliver when you promise. And if you can, over deliver, but not too much. Um, a little over delivering gets attention, but it leaves you room to maybe not be recognized and not be upset about it. Okay, we're up at our time here. I got to get to work, and I hope that you found this episode useful. I hope if you are a volunteer, you found it very valuable in how you can improve as a volunteer yourself. And if you're in leadership or you want to be in leadership, or maybe you're not in leadership, but you want to manage a project, I hope the tips that I gave you here are something that you find valuable. I want to thank you for watching, and I hope that you enjoyed it. Again, everything that I had to say. Be sure to catch me every morning, Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. Eastern, for an informed discussion on politics and culture or whatever I cook up. And then again, Sundays at 7 p.m. with my co host, Susan Hogarth, where we look across the vastness of tyranny in this country and we see what the LP, the Libertarian Party, is up to at the affiliate and the local level. Make sure you do all the proper audience things. Subscribe to my YouTube channel over at youtube.libertydad.com or go to Rumble. Oh man, I messed up. Rumble, I was supposed to get I have 5 I have 5 people that have subscribed to my channel on Rumble. So tomorrow I'm going to aim to stream to Rumble. So we will try to do that. I meant to do that this morning and just slipped my mind. But go to rumble.libertydad.com and make sure that when you're on one of these places and you're seeing my videos, like the videos, pass them around if you want, ring the bell, give me a comment. Let me know what you think. I don't always get to read the comments here in the show because I'm doing so many things and I'm trying to, keep up with the show. But I do go back and I try to read the comments as much as I can and sometimes even comment on them. So I'm seeing what you're saying. Okay. If you want to follow me, hit me up at social media, Liberty Dad at Facebook, Liberty Dad Pod on Twitter, or you can email me, go old school, Liberty Dad Podcast at gmail.com because I would love to hear from you. And lastly, remember, if you're a champion of liberty, your business is people and your product is liberty. Have a great week. Catch you tomorrow. But for now, I'm out.